Alright, hope everyone had a good Father's Day yesterday. Or if you just sat around the house. As long as you had a good day yesterday. Alright, so last chapter we learned more backstory on how Jack got fired from Stovington. And we learned that he has great metaphorical skills. Well, I guess he should. He's a writer, so. Alright, so. Chapter 15. Down in the front yard. Jack had found a huge white painted wicker chair in the back of the equipment shed 2 weeks ago, and had dragged it around to the porch over Wendy's objections that it was really the ugliest thing she had ever seen in her whole life. He was sitting in it now, amusing himself with a copy of E.L. Doctorow's Welcome to Hard Times, when his wife and son rattled up the driveway in the hotel truck. I'm going to try and read it like this, because it's in the way on my leg, so let's see how this works. Wendy parked it in the turnaround, raced the engine sportily, and then turned it off. The truck's single tail light died. The engine rumbled grumpily with post-ignition and finally stopped. Jack got out of his chair and smiled down to meet them. It doesn't work. Alright. I'll just hold it. Hi, Dad, Danny called and raced up the hill. He had a box in one hand. Look what Mommy bought me. Jack picked up his son, swung him around twice, and kissed him heartily on the mouth. Jack Torrance, the Eugene O'Neill of his generation, the American Shakespeare, Wendy said, smiling. Fancy meeting you here so far up in the mountains. The common ruck became too much for me, dear lady, he said, and slipped his arms around her. They kissed. How was your trip? Very good. Danny complains that I keep jerking him, but I didn't stall the truck once. And, oh, Jack, you finished it. She was looking at the roof, and Danny followed her gaze. A faint frown touched his face as he looked at the wide swath of fresh shingles atop the Overlook's west wing, a lighter green than the rest of the roof. Then he looked down at the box in his hand, and his face cleared again. At night, the pictures Tony had shown him came back to haunt him in all their original clarity, but in sunny daylight they were easier to disregard. Look, Daddy, look! Jack took the box from his son. It was a model car, one of the Big Daddy Roth caricatures that Danny had expressed an admiration for in the past. This one was a violent Volkswagen, and the picture on the box showed a huge purple VW with long 59 Cadillac Coupe de Ville taillights burning up a dirt track. Orange soda. Delicious. Orange Crush, Sunkiss, whatever it's called. The VW had a sunroof, and poking through it, clawed hands on the windshield down below, was the gigantic, warty monster with popping bloodshot eyes, a maniacal grin, and a gigantic English racing cap turned around backward. Wendy was smiling at him, and Jack winked at her. That's what I like about you, Doc, Jack said, handing the box back. Your taste runs to the quiet, the sober, the introspective. You are definitely the child of my loins. Mommy said you'd help me put it together as soon as I could read all of the first Dick and Jane. That ought to be by the end of the week, Jack said. What else have you got in that fine-looking truck, ma'am? Uh-uh. She grabbed his arm and pulled him back. No peeking. Some of that stuff's for you. Danny and I'll take it in. You can get the milk. It's on the floor of the cab. That's all I am to you, Jack cried, clapping a hand to his forehead. Just a dray horse, a common beast of the field. Dray here, dray that, dray everywhere. Dray there. Sorry, dray here, dray there. Just dray that milk right into the kitchen, mister. It's too much, he cried and threw himself on the ground while Danny stood over him and giggled. Get up, you ox, Wendy said and prodded him with the toe of her sneaker. See, he said to Danny, she called me an ox. You're a witness. Witness, witness, Danny concurred gleefully, and broad jumped his prone father. Jack sat up. That reminds me, Chumley, I've got something for you. I've got something for you, too. On the porch by my ashtray. What is it? Forgot. Go and see. Jack got up, and the two of them stood together, watching Danny charge up the lawn and then take the steps to the porch 2 by 2. He put an arm around Wendy's waist and burped in her face. Excuse me. You happy, babe? She looked at him solemnly. This is the happiest I've been since we were married. Is that the truth? God's honest. He squeezed her tightly. I love you. She squeezed him back, touched. Those had never been cheap words with John Torrance. She could count the number of times he had said them to her, both before and after the marriage, on both of her hands. I love you too. Mommy, Mommy! Danny was on the porch now, shrill and excited. Come and see! Wow! It's neat! What is it? Wendy asked him as they walked up from the parking lot hand in hand. Forgot, Jack said. Oh, you'll get yours, she said and elbowed him. See if you don't. I was hoping I'd get it tonight, he remarked, and she laughed. A moment later he asked, Is Danny happy, do you think? You ought to know. You're the one who has a long talk with him every night before he goes to bed. That's usually about what he wants to be when he grows up, or if Santa Claus is really real. That's getting to be a big thing with him. I think his old buddy Scott let some pennies drop on that one. No, he hasn't said much of anything about the Overlook to me. Me either, she said. They were climbing the porch steps now, but he's very quiet a lot of the time, and I think he's lost weight, Jack. I really do. He's just getting tall. Danny's back was to them. He was examining something on the table by Jack's chair, but Wendy couldn't see what it was. He's not eating as well either. He used to be the original steam shovel. Remember last year? They taper off, he said vaguely. I think I read that in Spock. He'll be using 2 forks again by the time he's 7. They had stopped on the top step. He's pushing awfully hard on those readers, too, she said. I know he wants to learn how. To please us. To please you, she added reluctantly. To please himself, most of all, Jack said. I haven't been pushing him on that at all. In fact, I do wish you wouldn't go quite so hard. Would you think I was foolish if I made an appointment for him to have a physical? There's a GP in Sidewinder, the young man from what the checker in the market said. You're a little nervous about the snow coming, aren't you? She shrugged. I suppose. If you think it's foolish. I don't. In fact, we can make appointments for all 3 of us. We'll get our clean bills of health, and then we can sleep easy at night. I'll make the appointments this afternoon, she said. Mom, look, Mommy! He came running to her with a large gray thing in his hands, and for one comic, horrible moment, Wendy thought it was a brain. She saw what it really was and recoiled instinctively. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Jack put an arm around her. It's all right. The tenants who didn't fly away have been shaken out. I used the bug bomb. She looked at the large wasp's nest her son was holding but would not touch it. Are you sure it's safe? Positive. I had one in my room when I was a kid. My dad gave it to me. Want to put it in your room, Danny? Yeah, right now. He turned around and raced through the double doors. They could hear his muffled running feet on the main stairs. There were wasps up there? She asked. She said, Did you get stung? Where's my purple heart? He asked and displayed his finger. The swelling had already begun to go down, but she oohed over it satisfyingly and gave it a small, gentle kiss. Did you pull the stinger out? Wasps don't leave them in. That's bees. They have barbed stingers. Wasp stingers are smooth. That's what makes them so dangerous. They can sting again and again. Jack, are you sure that's safe for him to have? I followed the directions on the bomb. The stuff is guaranteed to kill every single bug in 2 hours' time, and then dissipate with no residue. I hate them, she said. What, wasps? Anything that stings, she said. Her hands went to her elbows and cupped them. Her arms crossed over her breasts. I do too, he said, and hugged her. Alright, that's the end of chapter 15. I'll be right back with 16.